whenever I see a dish that I like, I'm like, okay, but how can I make it cute or just add like an extra touch to something, because um, one of my favorite parts about baking and cooking is like giving it to other people and like seeing them smile.
Hello everyone. Today at Yodoozy Chit Chat, we have Cayla Gallaghar, the creator of Panko Bunny, a YouTube channel which features some decadent and very aesthetically pleasing recipes for her pets and humans that you could just try out anytime. They're just beautiful to look at. So, Kayla, I noticed that you've been creating these recipes on YouTube for almost 8 years now, right?
Yes.
Uh, so, could you tell us the origin story of Panko Bunny? How did it all start?
So I have always loved baking, and I initially, as a career, I wanted to be an interpreter. I taught myself Japanese, and so I would just like for fun. It was just like a something that completely drew my interest in, and so I was actually in Australia at the time doing my master's degree in Japanese translation and interpretation. And I really got into watching YouTube, and I'm like, oh my God, everyone is having so much fun and they're so happy. And it just looks like this amazing thing. I'm like, how can I be part of this? And what do I have to contribute? Like, what, I don't know, like, do I have like any knowledge that people want to know? And so I thought about cooking and kind of bringing in like the cute and like a little aesthetically pleasing aspect of Japanese culture. I melded the two, and after I graduated from my master's degree, I realized that YouTube has far more potential to be far more lucrative than translation work. So I'm like, okay, let me just try like pursue this full time and see what happens for a couple of years. And luckily, it worked out. So, yes.
It did. It's like it's really amazing to see all of those videos, and it's all really well put together. And I
Oh,
must say,
thank
they're really
you.
admirable.
Oh, thank
Okay,
you
so
so much.
so a lot of people cook, right? But like they're not all passionate about it. So, but then one can really see in your videos how passionate you are about the food that you make and the recipes that you create. So, when did this passion first start, and like when did it transform into this platform that reaches out to so many people?
So, the story of when I started baking is very funny, and my friends always laugh at me when I tell this. So, I had I was going through, I think, the breakup of my first boyfriend, and I was like so frustrated. And so I decided to bake cookies for everybody in the class. This was in high school, except for him. It's very, very petty. Like, everybody's getting cookies, not you. And they were rabbit shaped, funnily enough, which ended up being my logo. But it became like this huge hobby, and so every weekend I started baking. So I'm like, maybe I should be grateful for that breakup because it like led me to my career. um, and yeah, I feel like I'm a very creative person, so I've kind of leaned into that. So whenever I see a dish that I like, I'm like, okay, but how can I make it cute or just add like an extra touch to something, because um, one of my favorite parts about baking and cooking is like giving it to other people and like seeing them smile and everything. So I love just like taking it to the next level and making it that much more special.
That's so sweet to hear.
Thanks.
Okay, so I noticed that there were a lot of savory dishes too, but then
Mhm.
sweets and baking, like you yourself said, they are your specialty. They are like the expertise, the level of
Yeah.
expertise that you have there. Yeah,
Yes.
it's really cool. So, and also you really like, I saw that you really like theme-based creations, like for Halloween and Christmas, and
Yes.
the whole experience of a theme. It's really seen in your work. So which
Yeah.
which is that one theme that you have the most fun creating a recipe around? Like the most, the one that you personally feel connected to or something.
I think it's usually for Christmas. So I've called it Cookmas in the past. And I usually, it's always around this time of year where I feel like this intense fear being like, oh my gosh, it's like 5 months away or something. Like, I have so much to prepare because what I like to do, I haven't been able to do it every year, but it's upload so much more frequently during December than than other months, just because on YouTube something that's really popular is called Vlogmas, where people vlog every day until Christmas. So I wanted to take that but turn it into cooking. But it's filming like a video, even if it looks like it's like 2 or 3 minutes long, it's about 10 hours of work. So it's not something that you can just like, you have to prepare for and you have to do things a lot in advance. So it's a lot of work, but I find that it's just such a nice time of year. I live in Canada, and so everything's like decorated to look like Christmas, and just the whole environment is just, it's so happy. And like I love cold weather. Like fall is my favorite season, so it's very, very cozy. So all those things just like fit together. It's so much fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, like sweets and Christmas, they really go together all the time. Just the happy
Yes.
vibe of Christmas. It's just, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And also, I'll tell you a fun fact. A lot of the reason why YouTubers post a lot during December is because at the end of the year, the ad rates on YouTube are the highest they are throughout the entire year. So everyone makes significantly more money through Google AdSense during that time as well. So I think that's a lot of incentive. Not for me, just because I like Christmas and I want to bake. But when you see a lot of people posting in December, I'm like, oh, that's probably why too.
these are some inside facts that the
Yeah.
creators know about. Okay, so even before and especially during the whole quarantine thing, recipe challenges have become extremely common on social media. And like I saw that you also love to share your own challenges that you're experimenting with. So, which has been the most interesting one for you, and something maybe that you'd like to do again?
Like, so what do you mean by recipe challenge? To be like,
Like, there is this particular sort of a challenge that goes around and people tag it, and everybody's trying to uh, uh, replicate that or something like that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like, okay, like the trending recipes and stuff like that, where like they blow
Yeah,
up on TikTok. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the one that was the most fun for me, what were they? So it started as hot chocolate bombs, and the I was so surprised that that was the most popular, because working with chocolate can be so finicky. Because if you don't set it the right way, it can just be it could just turn into such a mess. And I'm so surprised that like that was the one that got popular. But I took that and I'm like, okay, what else can we turn into? Like, this is like the hot chocolate version, but what else can we do? So I did a coffee version and I did a tea version where you use like basically like hard candy, but I flavored it with tea so that you just pop it into a cup of hot water and it becomes tea. And I asked my subscribers, I'm like, what else can we do? And so I'm trying to figure out how to do like a soup, like a savory version. I still can't figure it out, but those ones are really, really fun. Yeah.
The soup one seems exciting. I'll be waiting to watch it.
Thank you.
It seems
Someone said,
interesting.
thank you. One suggestion was gelatin, like using gelatin to set, I don't know, some kind of like soup base, so it keeps its shape. And I'm like, I think that might work. But if you use too much gelatin, then it'll change the texture of the soup. So I don't want it to just be like a very like, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's still on the list for sure to try.
Yeah. It's definitely something new and unique. So I'll be
Mhm.
waiting.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so like you said, that chocolate it's almost always trending. It's an all-time favorite. Chocolate is everybody loves chocolate.
Yeah.
So could you suggest any simple recipe, including chocolate, that could be whipped up in just a matter of minutes for a quick snack or a dessert, that you could savor the taste of chocolate and
Hmm.
not have to put too much time into it either? So if
Hmm.
if somebody comes over unannounced.
Yeah. Yep. So I have two. So my first is, I I feel like this is probably too obvious, but it's my hot chocolate recipe. But the way I make hot chocolate, I guess like traditionally you see it used with cocoa powder, but I use like I just grab a chocolate bar. So all you need in your house is a chocolate bar, and milk, or I guess and or whipping cream because it thickens the chocolate. But I just melt the chocolate bar into the milk, and it tastes so much better than classic hot chocolate. And everyone I've made it for is just like, oh my goodness. So that is a nice kind of like thing if your friend comes over and you just want to like sit on the couch and chat. That's a nice little treat that you can have together. And I just do it in the microwave normally, so it takes probably no longer than 5 minutes from like start to like finish when you're sitting on the couch. Another one I have is, it's on my YouTube channel. I can send you the link after this video if you like, but it's a little mug cake recipe. And so you bake it in a mug. Really, really easy to whip up, and it is so delicious and rich. And if you put like a dollop of fresh cream on top, or even ice cream, it makes it so nice and exciting. I made it for one of my friend's birthdays one year when we were just like rushing and didn't have a lot of time, and it tastes like it takes way more effort than it actually does.
Yeah, mug cakes like seem, like that perfect combination of not having too much of something and yet enjoying the whole flavor that comes with it. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good portion size, right? You don't end up eating too
yes.
much because it forces you to only eat what's inside the
Yeah,
mug.
exactly. Exactly. I'll have to add that to my list because I always, when it comes to sweets or cakes, I end up eating way too much. So,
Me
mug
too. Yeah.
cakes for
Me too.
sure.
There's some cakes I have on my channel that I look at and I'm like, I ate that whole thing. And like I don't even feel bad about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So, I saw that there are some really intricate and some pretty complex desserts and recipes that you've created. Which one has been the most challenging and the most complex dessert that you have ever tried out?
So I have one that brought me to tears. It was like 6 years ago and I still think back and like, oh my goodness. So it's based on like the themes that you mentioned previously. So one of my themes is Fashion Week, because outside of cooking, fashion is like my like second biggest passion. I love it so much. And so I started doing like a recipe of like designer themed recipes. So I did these Chanel nail polish gummies. So my thought, it eventually worked, but it took like 2 more years to figure out how to do it, was that it's all gelatin, so it's basically a gummy, but you know how in nail polish you see the color on the inside and you have the glass around the other side. So I wanted that to look like that with gelatin, but I added edible glitter to the colored portion, and it wouldn't set the gelatin, and I still can't figure out why, because I don't understand what's in edible glitter that prevents gelatin from setting. But I was filming this last minute for the video, and it wasn't working, and I kept trying, and it was like 3 in the morning, and I just like sat down and started crying. I'm like, I don't understand. This should be working. I don't get it. And I ended up just doing another last minute recipe. I changed it, did something else, and then 3 years went by, and I'm like, okay, I think I have the guts to try it again. And I just didn't even add the glitter because I'm like, I'm not even gonna bother or like chance it, and it ended up working. So it's a very like it's basically just gummies. It's a very complex way of making gummies, but I think they're so cute. So I'm proud of it, and I'm happy that I finally ended up doing it. But yeah, that brought me to tears.
I don't really bake, but I can understand because I've heard people talk about how difficult it is, and the smallest changes and the smallest
Yeah.
measurement errors, they will lead to huge disasters.
Yes,
But like
because
it's
yes.
really satisfying after you've completed that challenge, because something
Hmm.
that has been bothering you for so long, it will, after you conquer it, it will
Yeah.
be the ultimate sense of victory.
Yeah, I'm like, it's done. But yeah, like baking is such a chemistry. And my personality, I'm like, I love following rules. I'm very just like, yeah, this is the rule, so this is the way I do it. So that's why I think I tend to bake more than cook, because cooking, you can kind of like make decisions as you go, but I'm like, well, I don't know what decision to make. Like, I don't know. Someone needs to tell me how to do this because I don't know. So yeah, baking. If someone is more of a cook versus a baker, I feel like it can be tricky to transition into baking because you can't be as flexible with certain things. But at least for my personality, it works out really well.
So, since we're on the topic of, how difficult it can be to bake correctly, and since you've
Hmm.
been doing this for so long, have you come across any common mistakes that people end up making when they start baking when they're beginners?
Yes. So first one is measuring properly. So they're like, you have to have like the teaspoon measure and the cup measure. You can't just like grab a cup in your cupboard and use that, because like it's gonna go wrong, and like you're just like you're just not gonna end well, and like you'll be in tears too. Like so and even when you're measuring with like scooping, say, flour or something, you have to level off the surface. You don't want it to be like a mound of flour, because like that's like the ratio will then be incorrect. So that's an important one. I One of my favorite things to do, because it's so hilarious, is like looking on a Reddit on like baking fails because everyone's always laughing, and it's just so funny to see like, oh my goodness, like what happened to these things. And a lot of the time I noticed that people just aren't letting their cakes cool before they decorate them with frosting. So when you put frosting on a warm cake, it melts because the frosting is just like butter and sugar, right? So you see a cake and it's meant to look beautiful, then you just see frosting running down the sides. And I'm like, oh my God, if you waited like an hour or two, you would have been totally fine. So that's one. And then the last one is being careful with substitution. As I said before, in cooking, you can do it, and it's just like the worst thing that can happen is just it tastes different. But with baking, I had a roommate in university, and she was getting into baking because we were baking together, and she was all excited about it, but she didn't understand that it's a chemistry. So she was like, well, I didn't have butter, so I just didn't use it. I'm like, oh no. And the muffins were like very, very dense. I'm like, no, you can't do that. So like, if you don't have something, Google it. Like just go and Google and like see what the internet says, because like that's how you make it work. Don't just like think, oh, like this could work, because it might not, and then yeah, it's just the recipe's ruined.
I'm guilty of this one because the couple of times that I have tried baking, I've tried to use as much substitution because I find that I don't necessarily have all of that stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
too lazy to go out and buy it.
No,
So
I
I
totally
just
get
end
it.
up substituting stuff.
Yeah, like sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. So, since we are talking about the mistakes that can be avoided, what are some of the pro tips that can enhance the output of baking, and like what would be the pro tips that you could give? Three professional pieces of
Okay.
advice that you could give to us.
One of them, in regards to gelatin, keeps haunting me. um, is that pineapple and kiwi prevent gelatin from setting. So if you're making any kind of jelly, whatever with gelatin, don't use pineapple, don't use kiwi, because it won't set. There's something in like the proteins, or I think it's the enzymes in the fruit that prevents it from setting. So that's a big one to keep in mind. Um, Also, when you're icing a cake, you see how like professional cakes, you never see any crumbs on the outside of the cake, right? It's always just like clean, beautiful frosting. But a lot of times if you're trying it at home, you're like spreading icing on the cake, you're like, these crumbs are coming off the cake and it's getting everywhere. So a way to prevent that is by doing something called a crumb coat. So you want to coat the cake in a very thin layer of icing or frosting or buttercream, whatever you have, and then pop it in the fridge for like 20 minutes for that to set. And that will lock in all the crumbs. And then when you're putting the final, like the thicker layer of frosting on top, the crumbs will stay within that crumb coat, and you'll get the beautiful cover without any crumbs on top. Also, another tip: read the whole recipe through before you start baking. Like or when you're even like preparing. Like if you're like, okay, I'm gonna bake this weekend, read the recipe through, because this gets me all the time. I'm always baking, and halfway through I'm like, oh my God, I don't have that ingredient. Like I just came back from the grocery store. It gets me every time. Or when you're making something and you're preparing, like, okay, like I'm gonna like serve this for dinner tonight or for tomorrow. And then it comes to a step where it's like, set this in the fridge for 12 hours. Like, no, like, no. And yeah, so I just save yourself the heartbreak and read the recipe through, even if it's like boring to read it through. I definitely recommend reading it through.
I'll keep that in mind because I have again been found myself guilty of this one. Okay, so the one thing that's really unique about your channel is that the food is not only for humans but your puppies too, your dogs. They
Yes.
really enjoy the special treats that you make for them, and they're not just like dog bites or food that's supposed to be for dogs. You recreate
Mhm.
human food that
Yes.
that they can also enjoy, and like with ingredients that they'll enjoy. But it looks and it seems to be human, the food that we eat. So how did this idea come to your mind? How did this start? Like, yeah.
So I've wanted a dog my whole life, and so when I finally got my first dog, Paddington, he's the little blonde Pomeranian that you see running around. I just, of course, like my love for baking had to translate to them. I'm like, I'm going to make you everything, and you're going to be so spoiled. And then I was like, I think people would love it to to be able to like share, like not like their food, but like food that looks like what we eat with your dog. You know what I mean? It's like a whole nother level of bonding, because like feeding your dog kibble, which is what my dogs eat on like a daily basis. So like their diet is like balanced and healthy. I make sure that they're healthy. But for treats, it's like so cool to be like, oh look, here's a little hamburger that you can have that's totally safe for you. I feel like it's just like it adds a whole nother level of bonding, and my dogs are very happy. They support they support my decision. Yeah.
I agree because, like, as much as I love dogs, I feel like I wouldn't want to be one because then I wouldn't be able to enjoy all of this food that we eat, that
I
we humans eat.
know.
Yeah.
I
I'm
know.
just like, I can't survive on these dog bites and cookies. I will
Yeah.
not be able to survive. I need all of these flavors.
Yeah.
So, so I can
Yep.
agree. Your dogs must be super happy.
It's so cute whenever because I have two, so when I've gotten each one, it's so fun to share new flavors with them. So like giving them like mango for the first time, or giving them honey, that because it's honey is so sweet. So you see their face, it like lights up. They're like, oh my goodness, like this,
Oh.
what is this? What is this amazing thing? You could just see the happiness on their face. It's so cute.
So, like, aside from honey and mango,
Mhm.
which human food that you've adapted for dogs has been the best received by your companions, by your canine companions?
So it's in my dog cookbook. It's the little salmon fish cakes. Those so like my dogs are small, so I feel like the rules in the house are a little bit more flexible than they would be if they were like a big dog. So I was on the couch and I had one of the little salmon cakes and I was waiting for it to cool, and Paddington jumped on the couch and just basically like jumped onto my like neck to get it, just like mom. Like, they love salmon, but there was something about those where he just like would not let up. So I think that they're his most favorite for sure.
The one thing that makes me really sad is that dogs cannot eat chocolate.
Yes,
Why did it have to be toxic for dogs?
I
But
know.
we see that your recipes, they substitute carob as a safe substitute for chocolate, right? So
Yes.
can you explain a little bit to us, because I feel like I've heard this name for the first time. What is this carob and how does it taste?
So, so yeah, I did try eating carrot because I was curious. Like, what does it taste like? And it just, I think people eat it too. It's like when you look on Amazon, there's people who are trying it in recipes. So it's like edible for humans. It's not as good as chocolate. But basically, oh man, I'm going. Hold on, I'm gonna refer to I have the dog cookbook here. So in the front of the dog cookbook, I think it's like 18 pages. It's something really long of like all the ingredients that like you can or you shouldn't give to dogs, just to make sure that everyone's safe. I want to make sure that I'm getting the right information. What is it? Okay, so yes, so chocolate, it contains something called theobromine, and so that is what is poisonous for dogs. And it contains caffeine, and that's also dangerous for dogs. So that's the component that makes chocolate dangerous. And carob just somehow doesn't have it. But you also want to be careful of when you're buying carob that you're not getting the sweetened, you're getting the unsweetened, because a lot of sweeteners, especially artificial sweeteners, those are also toxic to dogs. So just plain unsweetened carob, and you're fine. They look like chocolate chips, so label them very clearly in your cupboard because like when you just look at them, you can't tell the difference. So I just keep mine with like the dog treats so that they're very different, and like I'm not gonna mix them up by accident. But yeah, so that's a big one. And you can also get it in powdered form. So making like hot chocolate for dogs, like chocolate, not really, but hot carob. It's so cute because like they can have their little like cozy treats during the winter too.
So since you've tasted it, does it taste too different from chocolate? Like, what
It
is it?
it tastes, so the texture is the same, and it melts in a very similar way. It's a little bit thicker. I don't even know. Okay, I don't want to say minty because that's not correct, but it's like it's somehow in that direction. Like menthol and that kind of stuff is dangerous for dogs too. So I don't know, but it's like it's not as sweet, I guess, because it was like the unsweetened version that I was testing. So I imagine it's similar to like unsweetened cocoa, but remove remove the cocoa flavor. It's very weird. It's not something that I'm
Okay.
ever interested in trying again. I tried it once and I'm like, I'm done. But the dogs like it, so it's okay.
Yeah. That's the plus point.
Yes.
Okay, so since chocolate just came up, apart from chocolate, which other human foods should be avoided to give to our pets? Should we avoid?
So avocado is a big one. That is super dangerous. Let me. I know these off the top of my head, but I'm like, I wanna make sure I'm giving you the right information. Also alcohol. Don't, that one is toxic for dogs. And blue cheese, like any kind of mold, like cheese. Dogs love cheese, but blue cheese in particular, it because like the blue is like the mold that like is marbled through the cheese, and I'm like, ew, I hate blue cheese, so I'm like, it's not in the house anyway. But that in particular is really dangerous for dogs, so you want to give them like cheddar or something like more neutral, not the blue cheese. And you also want to keep in mind that super fatty foods are dangerous for dogs because it can give them pancreatitis, and that is a trip to the vet in its own right. So you want to keep that in mind. Also caffeine, um, garlic and onion, those. So what is it with garlic? So I've seen a lot of recipes for dogs that contain garlic. Onions is like definitely no go, don't do that. So garlic can damage the red blood cells in your dog, but it's not, we don't really know how much garlic each dog needs to consume to get basically anemia or like to damage the red blood cells. So it's better to just avoid it completely. Like that's what my vet told me. And so that's what I'm sticking with. I'm like, if there's anything that is even slightly at risk of hurting my animals, then like they are never having it. Um, so yeah, garlic is another one. Mushrooms as well. I know it's not every variety of mushrooms, but I just, just to stay safe, I avoid that. As well as macadamia nuts specifically. Those are like peanuts are great. Macadamia nuts are a no. And xylitol. So this is an artificial sweetener. Most artificial sweeteners, like avoid them. Just avoid them all for your dogs. They're dangerous, but that can kill them. It's super dangerous, particularly xylitol. And I think I've heard it called like birch sugar recently. They've changed the terminology in recipe labels. So um, if you're looking at a treat or something and wondering if you can give it your dog, and if you're not sure what ingredient is, just Google it just to make sure, like, is something safe for my dog, because the internet will help you there.
This is really helpful because even if I research all of it, there is just so much debate about stuff like if it
Yeah.
actually is proven to be bad for them or if it's just a rumor, and
Yeah.
so this is really helpful information. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so glad. Yeah, I got my certification in pet nutrition before I wrote the book just to make sure. I'm like, I need to like be giving people correct information. Blueberries are, a lot of people, one of my most common comments are like, no, blueberries are bad for dogs. And like, they're not. I spent so much time looking, I'm like, okay, what's bad about blueberries? And the only thing I could find is that they're like a choking hazard because they're small. But other than that, they're fine. So I wouldn't worry about those. Yeah, that's a controversial one.
Okay, so you know, talking about the celebrity dogs, let's come to their let's come to their names. So
Yes,
they're two fluffy and cute Pomeranians called Paddington and Treacle. Am I pronouncing
yes,
that right?
yes. So few people pronounce it correctly, but yes, you got it right.
Oh my god, I'm so glad. So, and they just love to be in the kitchen. They are like walking
Yes,
around, and I've seen in the videos they're just so curious about everything that you're making. They
yes,
just they want to be a part of it. So,
yes.
which have been their favorite treats?
Let's see. So again, salmon is a big one. I don't know why. Like salmon's really good for your dog's coat too. The oils, like the omega-3 is really good for a shiny coat. So I'm glad they like salmon. Um, but I also made this like beef stew. I wanted to make it as complicated as like human stew. So if you're making something that's gonna take like 3 hours on the stove, I'm like, my dogs deserve that. So I bought steak, which was just so ridiculously expensive. But I'm like, it's for the cook. Like, it's okay. Expense it. It's fine. And so it's like the steak and sweet potato stew. And Paddington is just, when I was making it, he was just like waiting in the kitchen, just like sitting like next to the stove, being like, Mom, come on, is it ready yet? And teaching them that they have to wait for something to cool. It's like very hard because they don't understand. And so I think that's his favorite. Treacle, I what is her favorite? She's a little bit pickier. I feel like she's a little bit of like a princess. Like Paddington will eat everything. He is so happy. Just give me everything. I love it all. And Treacle is very, very like fancy and reserved. She's like not like I am. Very selective as to what I eat. So what would be her favorite? I made her a little like princess birthday cake on my channel. It's like a 3-tier because it's like probably weighs more than she does, but it's like a 3-tier pink cake. And in the frosting, I put beets, which gives it that really pretty bright color. And I filled it with a bunch of different, I think it's canned fish, if I remember correctly. And that is something that she absolutely loved.
So you said she acts like a princess. I think it's very justifiable because you've been giving them such a royal treatment.
It's my fault.
You give them such fancy treats. But it's really sweet. It's really sweet that they must be so happy and they must be like just so glad to have you around and have you as their mom.
Oh, thank you. They do know the word birthday cake now. So I'm like, so few dogs know that term. But if
so
I
cute.
say it in a particular way, Paddington stops everything and it's like, what did you just say?
That is so cute. So you just showed us that book, right? Which
Yes.
you wrote yourself. It offers around 80 different recipes for dogs. What's the name? I can't see it.
So it's called Pup Approved Dog Treat Recipes.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
All of them approved by Paddington and Treacle themselves.
Yes, I don't know how he knew, but he knew when the book was finished shooting, and because I shot this last summer, and he was so exhausted, Paddington. Like he loved eating all the treats, and he was just like he never turned them down. But like at the end, I could tell he slept for like half a day. He was like, no, I'm done. Like I just packed in so many calories over like the last like 8 weeks. He was just finished. It was so funny. So all of us were just exhausted after the shoot.
Can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek into this book? Can you tell us a little about it?
Yes. So this book is primarily treats. I wanted to just make it treats just because every dog's nutritional needs are different. So I don't want any readers' dogs to have like nutritional deficiencies just like by like using these as main foods. So definitely continue on with like your dog's usual diet as like recommended by your vet. So these are just little like supplements and little things for celebrations like birthday cakes. We have donuts. This is on my YouTube channel.
That looks good.
Donuts. What's in there? They're beef and Rice Krispies, so not as good as like human donuts, but they appreciate them. We also have a mermaid cake. So I wanted to make the cakes look kind of like human level too, so that your dog deserves to have a fancy cake. And like a lot of dog cakes just have little bones on them. And like, no, we're gonna go to the next level and like make it extra fancy. But then, so we have like a bunch of snacks in here, and then at the beginning, like I said before, there's a whole list of like foods that are like sometimes foods and like yes foods and like no foods, just so that everyone is like educated and knows like if you want to substitute, you know what not to add. And then we have some basics, so we have like salmon broth and chicken broth and like training treats and things to fill like little dog Kongs with, because I know Kongs are so popular. And it's really good if you need quiet time. Oh my goodness. Like if your dog's just barking like crazy, it's just like, just give them one of these and stuff it with peanut butter and it's like quiet. But so there's 5 recipes of like special like fancy Kong fillings in the book. But yeah, and then we also have, again, with the Christmas, I made a Christmas dinner, and I thought like, how cool would it be to like, what I mean, like have like what I have every year, but give it to the dog. So I used a Cornish hen, which are like the very, very small chickens, and I made like a whole roasted chicken with sides and stuff like that for the dog.
Those look like such beautiful recipes. I'm sure they taste amazing for the dogs, but they just look so pretty.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, talking about dogs, it's just a serotonin
Yes.
boost for like, especially for me because I don't have a dog, but I desperately want one,
Oh,
and I want to just shower them with love,
yes.
which is why I'm just so sad that our conversation is coming to an end.
Mhm.
And so the last question I want to ask you is, what more can we expect from Panko Bunny in the future? Like, what does the future hold in store for us? Or do you have any plans to start a separate channel just for dog lovers because it's just so popular?
I think I might. I'm currently like re-strategizing for YouTube. I'm bringing a couple of like people in to just like, okay, like how do I do this better and like how do I improve? So I'm thinking on YouTube, it's good to have like at least for what I can tell at this point, like they're separate enough that they could exist in different channels. So I'm thinking of maybe doing that. I'm not entirely sure. I'm currently rehauling my website, which is so much work. I am not a web designer and I do not understand anything with web design. So I'm currently working with someone and that is just taking over my life. But I'm very, very excited for that because eventually I love for Paddington to have his own blog and just write like a weekly post from his perspective. I think it would be so funny.
It would, it would.
Yeah, so that's what's coming. I actually have another book. It's all Halloween themed recipes. It's called Spooky Food. My
Ooh.
publisher's going to probably be like, "Yes, come on, tell people." I haven't told anybody about it yet. So that's coming very, very soon, actually. But yeah, so that's within the pipeline so far.
Like that definitely sounds like a lot of work, and it actually shows in how much appreciation and support you have garnered from the people, because
Oh,
like
thank
people
you.
seem to love everything about your channel.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I guess that was it. I mean, I'm so thankful that you took out this time to talk with us. The whole
Oh, thank you.
Yodoozy team thanks you,
Thank
and
you.
it was so wonderful meeting you. It was wonderful.
It was so nice. Thank you so much. Your questions were so wonderful and thoughtful. I really, really appreciate it. And I had so much fun.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I wish you the best for Panko Bunny. I'm sure you're gonna go
Thank
a lot
you.
of high places.
Fingers
And
crossed.
have a good day.
Thank you so much.